Hello.
Does that help?
No. Just test.
Yes, because I'm an Andy.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Is this your personal speaker?
This is Rich's.
So, do you still, is
I
yours
still use
working?
that. Yeah, mine works for that.
Oh, well, because I asked, because mine doesn't, and I was a little stuck, and I was going to borrow Elise's, and then I saw this, and I said, can I use it? And so I did. Well, cool. That's something I plan on purchasing, because it's very convenient. Just to
Oh, it's
see- I
not
wanna
even
get-
Bluetooth. You should get a.
It does have Bluetooth capability, but I like that I can put it in because then I don't have to worry about fighting with it.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't want to, I want it when I need it, not when it works sometime, you know? I think it has Bluetooth though, I do, but I just did it for today. Let me know.
I saw how to do, but I don't know how. I don't get how.
Where's this stuff? It's fun. If you had TikTok, you would have.
I'm not going to drop my soul.
Leave that in or
Just close it for now. No,
Oh,
that's
oh,
fine.
sorry.
Because I do. Is it off anyway? It's all right.
I think you did, I'm sorry. I
No,
just-
that's fine. Thank you.
Oh, this is mine.
No. Oh wait.
Sucrose.
Whatever you.
Yeah, we did.
Oh no, fructose. Yeah, there's like fructose in like corn.
Wait, olive
Maltose. Lactose. I know lactose. Lactose tolerance.
Where do you think I'm getting these?
The papers you're looking
Uh huh. Who do you think made these papers that I'm looking at?
at.
Uh huh. So some of these might look familiar to some of you guys. And I hope that you're not looking at whose they are, but okay. Alright. That was something. And then,
Miss Pittman, can I get my water from my mom?
yes, hurry up.
I'm so much tired to do that.
Alright, that was another one.
I think I know who the second one is. I think that the second one is mine.
Oh boy, that's not a good thing.
Yep. You recognize this. This is maybe you've gotten the picture that it's not a good idea.
Love this whole follow chain. It's fun.
Okay. And then I think there was another one that I thought was kind of funny.
Funny.
Amusing. Okay.
I went home and studied all of them.
You did study all of them? Okay, good. Well, that means that you'll be able to solve what is wrong here, right?
This man went to get milk. I found my water, but I found my milk.
Okay.
Wait, milk? You just bring milk?
I love okay, like for
Man's left the baby.
you can't say I'm a serial killer because a lot of other people like milk too.
I hate milk.
You're girls, I love girls.
For lunch? Oh, okay. I thought you
All right. All right. So I want you, before we get any further, and start making more complex molecules, we need to address these issues, all right? And not all of you did them. Some of you guys had perfect papers. Some of you guys had a few of these problems. Some of you had all of them. I don't think any of you had all of them. But we need to address this. All right, so when I asked which one is present in all three of those structures that I gave you, right? Who said a carbonyl and hydroxyl? Raise your hands. Anyone? Yeah? Okay. The question was, I gave you those three structures, and I say which functional group is present in all of them. And hold on. So when I told you about carbohydrates, when we introduced them, I said there are two functional groups that are present in carbohydrates that we can identify, and those two were what? Hydroxyl and carbonyl. Oh, and that's another one. Someone did this. All right. So, but the problem is, what does the carbonyl look like? And this is you guys have to know this. Some of you guys drew this, right? Some of you guys drew something that looked a little bit like this, right? Some of you guys drew something that looked like that. Some of you guys drew something that looked like these, right? What exactly is a carbonyl? What does it look like? So when I wanted to see carbonyl, I wanted to see something that looked like, the main thing that's important in a carbonyl is that it's a carbon double bonded to an oxygen, right? And then how many bonds does carbon want to have total? 4. So that means that it has these extra bonds right here coming from the carbon itself, right? Are we okay for this?
Yeah.
Why is this kind of weird? Or not?
Because it's not supposed to, the carbonyl does not necessarily have those two groups attached to it.
Well, it might, okay, so that's true. Carbonyl doesn't necessarily have, so when I wanted the carbonyl, I wanted just this by itself, right? Someone put this for a ketone, right? Or ketose, which is correct in a way, but what's sort of wrong with it?
It's like the lines are connecting, they should be separate.
Right, it should be clear that these are actual separate bonds, right? So these should have separate arms here and here, right? And also why, and they should be connected to what? To the carbon atom, right? And instead of kind of scrunching them all over here like this, I think it might just be easier to draw it how? Just like that, and then have one be this R and one be this R over here. All right? Are we okay for that? All right. This one, so these things are separated, that's fine, but where are these bonds going to?
It's showing that.
They're going into the other bonds, which is kind of, that's a little weird. We want to make sure that these two are going where?
Carbon.
From the carbon, right? So again, I would just do, make it clear that these are actually coming from the carbon. They're not, it's not like a connected thing, right? So that should be the aldose, right? Aldose should look like this. Ketose should look like this. We're okay? Okay. This one, what's wrong with that?
It has 6
Bro,
bonds.
it has too many bonds, right? Where are these extra orbitals coming? It doesn't have those extra energy shells, right? So, what should we do to get rid of this, or to fix this? We just have to get we have to get some of the hydrogens gone, right? So it should look like that, right? Is that an aldose or a ketose?
That is
An aldose, because it has one of the two things connected to the carbon is a hydrogen, right? Okay. What's wrong with this one?
The oxygen is bonded to hydrogen.
Yes. How many electrons can hydrogen fit in its outermost valence shell, which is its only valence shell?
We can fit one more,
Only
2 in total.
Two electrons total. How many bonds total then? 1, right? So how many bonds does this hydrogen have?
2.
It has 4, right? You can't do that, right? So the hydrogen can't be in the middle here. This can't be hydrogen. This should be the carbon, and this could be the hydrogen here, right?
That would be an aldose.
Right, and this would be an aldose, right? Okay, what about this guy?
Single bond, and then obviously it switch the carbon and the hydrogen.
So first of all, we need this to be a double bond, and we need the carbon and hydrogen to switch again, right? So make sure if you were the ones who did kind of something crazy like this, make sure you know why it was wrong, right? Okay, And then, so let's look at these definitions a little bit. So a carbonyl is present in all the structures. Was a carbonyl present, was one of those things present in all of those three structures that you guys saw? Maybe I should have told you to circle it in each of them. Could you find it in any of them? Do you guys remember what it looked like? Was there a carbonyl group in any of these? No. The carbonyl, when it forms a ring, the carbonyl group disappears and becomes that O in the middle, right? So there's no actual carbonyl group in those to speak of. What functional group is present in all of them? Hydroxyl group, right? And hydroxyl group is what? It's oxygen bonded to... Yeah, but the functional group itself is the OH. That's the functional group, right? Why can't I write it like this? George?
Because that's showing that the H is bonded to the carbon. That's right now.
Exactly. That's showing that the H is connecting the O here and the whatever carbon chain here is, right? But what should be in the middle there?
The O.
It has to be the O. So you could do this, right? Bonded to the C. Or you could do this. At least the O, but the O has to be the one in the middle. All right? Make sure you don't make this mistake on the quiz too. All right? All right, so now what exactly is a carbonyl? Like definition, is it a sugar? It's a functional group. What does functional group mean? Maybe I didn't explain this well enough. But so here's some molecule I have. We don't care what's in that molecule. And then I have off of it coming, right? Okay. And one part of this molecule happens to have whatever, this in it. That's a functional group, meaning I can identify that one it's like a puzzle piece almost, but I can identify that and say that's in this molecule, right? So is it a sugar itself? No. Is it a chain of carbons by itself? No, because OH is a functional group, and is there any carbons in that at all? No. So it's not a chain of carbons, right? It's not a carbon chain. It's not a sugar itself. But what's the proper relationship between a sugar and a carbonyl? What's a correct sentence that would say that the relationship between them properly? Arsh?
Carbonyl is a part of a sugar.
Good. A sugar contains, right, the functional group, which is a carbonyl, and it also contains what? Hydroxyl groups, functional groups, right? Are you guys all okay with this? Because a lot of you guys had kind of crazy answers for this. So I thought it was pretty straightforward, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page before we move on. Good? All right, I'm going to pass this out real quick, and I want to make sure you guys look at it carefully and then try not to make that mistake again, okay? All right, here we go. Here we go, Juliana. Okay. What was the relationship between those three molecules that I showed you on the quiz? I mean, this isn't a quiz, but on this.
They were all sugars.
They were all sugars. What else?
I forget what they look like.
They had
Fructose, glucose, and galactose. They're all hexoses. Good. What else?
all hexoses?
A carbonyl and then aldo.
A carbonyl is just the C double bonded to the O part.
Mm-hmm.
But that could be there are two types of carbonyls.
Yeah, but a
Ketose.
carbonyl and a aldo.
Aldose?
What are those?
Huh?
What are those
That's
classical
like where
notes?
the double bond happens,
Okay, gotcha.
right? Isn't the aldose at the end? And
So both aldose and ketoses, they are types of carbonyl groups because they contain this thing.
Oh yeah, wait. What was the
Ketose?
carbonyl has two underneath it, but then there's one that's different than a carb. What is it called?
hydroxyl,
Oh, Oh, okay.
right?
So all carbohydrates, we can identify them because they have two. They have to have both,
Yeah.
right? They'll either have a carbonyl group, right? They have a carbonyl group and they have a hydroxyl group, right? But when they're in a ring, they don't have the carbonyl group anymore. It just kind of turns into this O in the middle of the ring.
Okay.
But it was originally the carbonyl group, but it's not a carbonyl group in that form when it's in the ring, right?
Okay.
And the other thing that you should look for is hydroxyl groups, and then you can say, okay, that's a carbohydrate.
Okay.
If you can identify those parts. Okay, Mike, sorry.
How do you identify hydroxyl again?
HO.
HO or
H O or OH, yeah.
human?
Eden, Sarah, Jasmine, Anna. Yes. Yes, and they actually, from now on, we're pretty much going to treat them as rings.
Okay.
So let's just kind of, we're pretty much rings most of the time. Alright, here we go. Alright, you guys ready to go on?
I hope so.
I hope so too. We need to get a lot done by today.
Bro, it is.
Okay. So I gave you the handout so you guys are ready to follow along with me, right? And then we're going to continue making models too. So did you guys like that part or not? I hope it helps you guys like kind of visualize it a little better.
Oh, of course. I should just offer you like.
Yeah, you should just collect everybody's papers.
Yeah, and then like look at it and I'll copy everything and then I'll like offer them. I'll make them pay me.
All right.
Business using not my property.
It's kind of amusing. All right. Okay. So. Oh, where's my? Oh, did she turn it off? She did.
If you have a dog, you have another dog too.
I put your thing back. Huh? I think they were changed to the Thursday and Friday, like the first week of April. That's next week now. Okay.
Wait, when were they originally?
I think they were supposed to like straddle that weekend, so they were supposed to be like on Friday and then on Monday.
That'd be awful.
Yeah, so they took a survey like of the faculty like last week, and I voted that we should have them on Thursday, Friday. But I don't know how that's gonna work. Marking period. I have a marking period class, so I might have to then not do anything with them on that Monday because it's still technically like marking period 1, right? I don't know. You don't have to worry about it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be like. So this is semester 2, so you guys will probably have. Wait, yeah, I think they still do it like so. Bio is like the second day, right? And then for the finals, it's the first day. So I think the first day of midterms, they'll test 1 and 2. Don't. I think it's 1 and 3 that they test, and then the next day it's 2 and 4. Okay. Yeah.
For the finals, is that going to be like on the last day of school?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that's so fun.
Maybe there is one final day after. I don't
Can
remember.
Like, go home early after finals?
I mean, that's your choice.
Wait, are we like learning the last day of school?
The last day of school? No, I mean, I think we just go over the final or whatever. I don't remember. You guys you don't need to worry about it yet. All right.
Wait, are we taking it on the last day of school?
I don't remember if it's the last day or the day before, but
What if you don't come to school the last 3 days of school?
then you don't pass the course. You know, like if you don't take the finals, then you don't pass.
But you're not going to stay here, so you
Wait.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't they just take the grades high enough? Wouldn't it be like
I guess then. I don't know how it works. I'm new here. All right. All right, we're starting. All right, what's a monomer? Does anyone know?
one name?
Okay, one name. That. Okay, the word mono means one, right? Mer in this case, no mer is not really like name in this case, but
It's like something of like the isomers is like molecules with one. Wait. Never mind.
all right. So a monomer is like the single, or it's like the smallest unit of a biomolecule, right? So an example of a monomer is like glucose, right? And if you take one glucose, that's the monomer, and then if you put tons of glucose and you bond them together in like this long chain, then that becomes, does anyone know?
Glycogen, bro.
So these are each monomers, and if you take them all together, it creates a polymer. So the polymer is basically like a larger molecule. It's still also considered a molecule, but it consists of these smaller units, or like the monomer units. And this is how like biomolecules are made, right? They have like these basic units, and then they all combine to form these like humongous molecules. That's why they're called macromolecules, right? Okay, so in like we're talking about carbohydrates. So what's the monomer of carbohydrates? A monosaccharide, right? So it means single sugar, right? One sugar, right? Okay. An example of a monosaccharide was glucose, galactose, fructose, what else? Ribose, deoxyribose, right? So it's like a single like molecule, intact molecule on its own, right? That is classified as a sugar because it has the carbonyl and it has the hydroxyl group, right? Okay. All right, can I go on? Okay. So there are certain levels, and they measure them by how many monomers are in them, right? So the single one would be monomer, right? So monosaccharide, that's one. What's the next level? If we put one and one together, we get two, so it's going to be a disaccharide, right? Have you ever heard of this word, this prefix before?
Is it three?
No, have you heard of it in like history? They talk about like, right. What is that refer to? So it's like a group. It's a government ruled by a select few, right? So in this case, it means like 3 to 10 monomer units together in one molecule, right? So I would call that an oligosaccharide, however you want to pronounce it. And then anything beyond 10 is just kind of just called poly. Okay? Pretty easy? Okay. All right, and so mono and di together, those are pretty simple, right? So we call those simple sugars. And then once we get into like the range of between 3 and like hundreds, what would we... Complex, right. So these are simple carbohydrates or simple sugars, and then complex carbohydrates. Okay? Yeah?
So if one has 10,
Yeah.
could it be both a poly and a
No, it would... I think it would be I think it would be an oligo, because I think including 10 is... 10 plus means more than 10, like over 10.
Oh, I thought it would be 10 and
Okay. So today we're going to work on putting these monomers together, right? And there's a process that happens. So I just like simplified this. Let's say that this is a monosaccharide. Let's say this is glucose, right? I took out some of the parts because those aren't really that important to us, but this is supposed to represent glucose. Can you see how this model came from what glucose really looks like? Yes. All right, so this is one molecule of glucose, right? And if I want to put two molecules of glucose together, what would I need over here? I would need another one, right? So there's another one. I forgot to put the O here. There should be an O here too. I added that this morning, and then I forgot to make it like an animation. So that's why it's like that random O there. Okay, so this is glucose and that's glucose. We can appreciate that? All right. And then what are these two things right here? What are these groups that I've kept in? Those are hydroxyl groups, right? And you guys know why I put HO this way? Because what is this bonded to? It's bonded to the oxygen, right? And this is also bonded to the oxygen, so I just wanted to make that clear. That's why I put HO instead of OH, right? Okay, so this is how we put them together. These are the hydroxyl groups, right? Right there. What do we know about oxygen that's bonded to hydrogen? And this is where the chemistry unit comes in. Addie?
It's polar.
It's polar, right? So what happens to this oxygen right here? It's partially negative. And what happens to this hydrogen? Partially positive. What happens to this hydrogen over here? Partially positive, right? So this oxygen actually, which is partially negatively charged, it goes over to sees this hydrogen over here, and if they sort of bond together and have an attraction, what's that called? Were you going to raise your hand? Leader? When an electronegative atom from one molecule gets attracted to a hydrogen atom that's partially positively charged, this is already a polar bond here. Between oxygen and hydrogen itself, that's a polar bond. So, yes, it's cohesion, but what type of bond is that? That's a hydrogen bond, right?
Makes sense.
So, but instead of just making a hydrogen bond, which it could, it actually just like snatches that hydrogen away from that other hydroxyl group, right? Not very nice. But, so then what comes out then? If this guy comes over and snatches this, it becomes H2O, right? So H2O gets removed, right? But then what happens to this guy? Kind of lonely, right? So doesn't double bond, but that's a good guess. What else is kind of, so now that this OH is gone, who else is missing something? This, what is this over here?
Carbon.
This carbon over here is like, wait a minute, I just lost my OH, and this one's like, oh, I just lost my H. So this actually forms a bond over there, and then it results in something that looks kind of like that. It's not a double bond because oxygen only has one bond to this one and one bond. What's right here? What is this?
Carbon.
This is also a carbon, right?
But that carbon is double bonded to the O, like to the top left of it, right?
No.
So carbon only has 3 bonds.
Oh, there's an H there that's not being shown. Yeah. Just for simplicity's sake, I took out the H's right there. But so basically this whole thing, this carbon, the carbon that lost its OH, and then the oxygen that lost its H when this water was formed, they bond together and they make what is called a glycosidic linkage, right? That's like the type of bond formed. Glyco means what? The prefix?
Of
Sugar, right? Glycosidic linkage, bond. You can call it glycosidic linkage or glycosidic bond, either one. Okay? And this process, what's happening? Water used to be in in both of these molecules, and water gets taken out. When you don't have enough water, what do you call yourself?
Dehydrated.
Dehydrated. So this process is called
Dehydration synthesis.
dehydration synthesis. Synthesis means making. Dehydration means taking water out. So it means the process of making a bond and losing water, right? It's also called condensation.
Cool.
Okay? So if I say, what's the process by which 2 monosaccharides are joined? Dehydration synthesis. Or condensation, right? Okay?
Why can't you say glycosidic?
Because that's not a process.
Okay.
Glycosidic linkage is what?
It's one bond.
That's the bond itself, right? That's that bond where the O is like holding hands with both molecules, right? So if I asked for the process by which 2 monosaccharides are linked, you would say dehydration synthesis or condensation, right? And if I said what kind of bond is formed between the two, then you would say glycosidic linkage. Okay, good? All right, so what about the opposite reaction then? What if I want to take them apart? Now that they're together, now I want to take them apart. So what needs to go back in? The water needs to go back in, right? And then it needs to add, so if this one's going to go back over here, it needs to add what to it?
One of the hydrogens to one of them, and then the
One of the hydrogens needs to go back over here, and that will go over there, right? And then the other OH is going to go where?
just go back to the carbon.
Back over here, right? And so we're going to basically reverse that whole process that we did, right? And this one is called, this process is called hydro, which means water. Lyse means to break, right? So if I said by what process is a polysaccharide or a disaccharide taken apart, then you would say hydrolysis. Okay. Okay, good. All right, so let's just do, so here, let me just show you another example here. So before I was using just those like blank, like hexagon things, but now this is actually glucose, right? And then I'm going to add it to another actual glucose, right? How do I do it? What's going to happen here?
The H is gonna be connected to the partially charged. So
All right, so this OH here is going to go over and try to steal, it's going to steal that H from the other one, right? What comes out then?
water.
That's going to form water. And then what's going to happen to that lone O and that C over there? It's going to form, not glycogenic, glycosidic linkage, right? There's the glycosidic linkage there. And this was glucose and that was glucose. Do you know what two glucoses together make?
Sucrose.
Nice try, but
Glycogen.
nice other try, but no. Maltose. Good. Very nice. Is that on the? Just think it's on the paper, but okay.
Wait, do I have to like actually like
Yeah, you should do those.
Oh yeah.
All right. All right. So glucose and glucose make maltose, right? Glucose and fructose make
Sucrose.
sucrose, which is also known as table sugar, which is sugar that you guys just eat, right? And then the third one is lactose, which is in what?
Milk.
Which is in milk. So lactose is formed by glucose and galactose, right? So do you see why we built those three the other day? Right? Which one goes into all three of the disaccharides? Glucose, which one? And then the other two is just a combination, right? It's either glucose and fructose, or glucose and lactose, right? Or sorry, galactose. And so this is known as milk sugar, this is known as table sugar, and that's known as malt sugar, I think. Right? Something like that. I don't know. You don't need to know that, but you do need to know, like, so if I said,
Called table sugar?
called table sugar. This one. So suppose I asked you a question like, what results from the hydrolysis of sucrose?
H.
Think about it for a second. So the hydrolysis of sucrose, right? Sucrose is going to be broken down into its component monosaccharides, right? Ro? Glucose and fructose, right? Suppose I say, what results from the condensation of glucose and glucose? And I want all the products, not just the disaccharide product. I want all the products. George, you're confident?
Yeah, you produce H2O and maltose.
H2O and maltose. You guys don't forget that H2O is a product of that too, right? Because that's the whole idea of dehydration synthesis or condensation. You have to have that water coming out. Don't forget that, right? When water comes out, you're making stuff. When you're putting water in, you're breaking stuff, right? Make sure you don't confuse those. All right? Don't confuse. All right, so are you guys ready to start your modeling? What do you think you're going to be modeling today?
We're gonna be modeling those three.
Huh?
Is every bond that links monosaccharides together called
Glycosidic linkage, yes. Yeah.
So it's not just the ones with glucose?
Nope. Yeah. Anything with, yeah. Any other? Okay. So you guys know what to do. I'm going to give you the instructions on the PowerPoint. And I actually want you to work in pairs. All right? So first, if you work in pairs, then you should have enough of this equipment to be able to make the disaccharides, right? So you have on the back, do you guys see on the back, you have the models, right, for what it should look like? Right? So that's how, and some of them you might have to twist around a little bit to get it to look like that. But I would start, you can use the ones from before too and just find glucose, right? Like you can build two glucoses, you can build, a glucose and a fructose. I would start with two glucoses, right? So here.
Mike just ingested some lactose. There wasn't though. It was that one with the cow on it. Alright, are you ready?
Take one each. But I want you guys to construct this disaccharide together, right? We're going to talk about that after this. Yeah, oligosaccharides we're going to talk about maybe after
extra one more.
One should be like 2 per group.
Yeah, 1 per person, 2 per group. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
Can we get one?
Carbon.
All right. So wait. Here's the idea. This is what I want you guys to do. And I'm gonna come look. You guys remember how to do this?
No.
I wouldn't say experts, but definitely.
I would say probably not knowledgeable at all how to do anything in my life. So I'm really independent.
Or stop complaining.
I'm not complaining, okay? I'm just saying what I am.
It's not a thing. You're looking for sympathy.
Why are you complaining about my complaining, huh?
FML, I'm done here.
Fuck, you're laughing away.
Does it sound funny when he does it?
Whenever I hear it, I just can't
It
stop
doesn't
doing
sound
it.
correct. Like
It does.
everyone thinks it's like so similar, but it's not. Mine's just a bunch of like ha ha ha's put together.
It's not ha,
But
ha,
his
ha.
is like it sounds like he's talking with no neck. Like
So class sounds like Mike. I'm sorry to tell you this. I don't know how else to tell you it.
I like that.
Oxygen. It's a nice laugh.
I do too.
Because your laugh makes me laugh, which is good.
Your laugh is contagious.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I know. I don't like it.
Look at this. This carbon ring. It's like the best ring I've ever had in my life. Probably the only ring I'll ever afford in my life, but that's okay. I think a lot of people built that.
Yeah, he's there. You guys are smart. You guys are smart. Just tell me something. No, I thought about that. So I should not be discontinued.
Alright, so that is one of the this I have the crossover group right here.
Right.
Wait, I thought you said that you were already done.
Oh no, I just hydroxyl group, okay, I'm not that fast. I'm not the fastest man alive, okay, that's class. Not what I do. Good job, Leo, I'm proud of you.
Something like really like I was like I didn't need it.
Fun about it. It's the only fun I'll be having in this class all day. Because it's
always gets me just the CH2O.
Help us. No, that's the fun part.
C6H1206, boys.
Please stop.
That's just like, you know, everything. Everything is C6H1206. Do you have a little brother? He's made of C6H1206.
Physical?
You're like amazing after it. You like fixed all it. Wait, like he's doing like
I'm sure like until we're doing
you guys all took a look at the mistakes you made on that plate, right? You did, right? It's not very good last time.
No, she said
You guys saw what you did wrong
I don't mean to be very honest. Don't let anyone ever say that you can do anything, because you can do everything. Because you are the ideal one. It's not sarcasm.
I only said it for midterms.
Yeah.
Wasn't like the best name when the carbonyl group was in the center of the molecule?
I really hope so.
Like mine was
Wait, did you have the first one?
You might pick up the pace, come on.
my hands are slippery.
Slippery with what? Water? H2O. I'll make some H2O right now. Your Aria's class is British, and I feel like
Anytime you see double bonded to O, and then there's some other things here, you know that that's going to be, that's a carbonyl. And then you have to determine whether it's ketose or an aldose. Because there are only two types of it. It could be this or it could be this. So it could be this bonded to, if there's an H on one of these,
6 carbons, 12 hydrogens.
and then this is an R group, meaning that it's like, meaning that it's any chain of carbons. So for example, this could be like this. It could be like C double bonded to O. Here's the H over here. And it could be like COH, H, COH, or H, COH. What?
Hold on.
Make it what?
Wait, it's not like that.
No, because this is the hydroxyl group.
Yeah.
So this whole thing is not a ketose. It's not a ketose. I mean, it's classified as a ketose because it has this ketose group right here, right? But this is a hydroxyl group. That's a carbonyl. And this whole thing here happens to be a which type of carbonyl? Aldose. It's aldose because it's on the end.
Let's give you the pressure. Okay, which one are you making?
Right?
Go off to the right.
Alright?
Remember the one, whenever size 1 is that's in high.
That means that this is a carbon chain and this is a carbon chain. For example,
I was trying to think about it.
Alright, I think I'm done. Pretty sure.
This would be HO4.
Pretty sure I'm
Oh,
done.
It doesn't make it because you can't open it.
something like that. You see why this is a ketose? Right? Because this is a carbonyl group and it has a C group over here, which is basically R, right? And then it has a carbon chain over here, which is the second R, right? They could be the same, they could be different, it doesn't matter. But the fact is, this is a carbon attached to that, not an H.
Make sure you have 6
So
carbons.
this
1,
makes
2,
it
3,
a
4, 5,
ketose, right?
6.
But this is the ketose group itself, that's the
4,
carbonyl
5,
group,
6
right?
oxygens.
And then it still has hydroxyl groups here. Here are the hydroxyl groups, right?
Yeah.
So this doesn't make it a hydroxyl.
Okay, well, I mean, I have to have the
This is a understand?
So now what we use are going to bond, alright? Remove your hydroxyl.
And you have it coming out from the right side, right? Down here.
And it's dissimilar. Then you have to do this.
I'm missing
And then you have to share an on. Wait, so get rid of yours. I'm keeping this on.
I'm just wanting to make that it should be over here, like in this orientation.
Oh wait, no. Mine has to be completely off. So for you, you're optional because we take
Yeah, you guys don't want to see them the original ones. I want you to show me the process of them actually getting to the
Oh, wait. So we're
I want you to show me them. Do you guys have them original?
Bond is besties.
In their original form? I want them in their original form.
on us workout.
We're done.
Alright,
I see I have glucose and glucose. Okay. Alright. Alright, so you have this one right here. Okay, here's one glucose here, okay. And where's the other glucose? Okay, I want it like this. So which ones are going to interact?
my one to the right of my
Alright, so take them off.
Yeah.
Where's this hinge you got?
Right.
Wait, take off. Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah, it doesn't matter actually which one it is, but then it's there.
And then
There's the water. Good.
Boom.
Alright, hydrolyze it back.
Hydrolyze it? Okay.
Hydrolyze it back.
Wait, I didn't.
Hydrolyze it.
Now we have to hydrolyze it. Then add the water, right? So what we do is we detach these boys. I'm gonna make it galactose now. Which one mine is galactose? C. And then I just switch these two and then I have the two hydrolysis. You go to hydrolysis. Guys, galactose is just called space sugar because it's galactic, right?
No, we don't have
Eat berries in the morning. Me and the boys making balanced breakfast with berries in the morning so we don't die, according to the Hosa, I think, maybe. Hosa.
This is what I'm looking at right here.
Order pancakes, order 10. Or let's see what's your parents again. Alright,
It happened once and I was wearing
I'm coming over there. This is really messed up looking carbon. Technically speaking, this is edible because you have just made a carbohydrate. So Andrew, you ready to bond, like work up? I think it's only the prophecy that we bond.
Hold on, what is it called?
Hydrolysis. Andrew, you can miss the last slide of this.
It's okay. And then that makes them separate right now.
And then black. You make
A fructose and a galactose. So you don't get a 6 and 4 in your math. Wait, now we have to make a fructose and a galactose. I don't. I was based on my Friday. That's how I did it.
That's how I did my glasses. You have to.
So I'm thinking. Wait.
What?
She did the right past her.
What?
I mean, that's
I have on.
Are you wanting us to like
No. In your group,
she would go on top of it and then she would tell us all the
Because it was just a really cool thing, remember?
Yes. Yeah.
Alright, time to go out the stars. So, alright, okay. Break. I'll get carbon.
Oh, wait. So it's this one that we have to take off.
You get meatballs. You got.
Are you sure?
Yeah, not us.
Alright, remove the oxygen is right there. Fine, I'll remove This is not the correct one. What are you thinking about?
As a child,
We made lactose.
Mom or Mom?
Good, you didn't find it.
Mom or
Lactose.
Show me your
And once I change it, lots of people each said the same that.
Give me your other hydrogen.
Half of people. Even if it doesn't, I was like, come on. I got my nails. And the view from the room is
Yay! You made the water. Would you like some milk sugar? Hannah, do you want some milk sugar?
let's start tearing up. Okay, that's the last thing you can ruin.
Alright, take my milk sugar.
There's only one of me and there are a lot of you, and I'll come, I promise.
There's like 7 people down there. You remember the first class I had a bill on me? I didn't even notice. No, first degree. Yeah.
Wow.
I already made fruit juice. I just need to
Mike, do you drink water?
No.
This is H2O2. This is...
I drink Asia.
This is hydrogen peroxide, guys. I'm in hydrogen peroxide.
This is awesome.
Yo, have you ever gone to cut and like your mom goes to use water with the
Peroxide? Look what I
What is that?
There's not even
Don't answer because we're gonna pretend.
Okay, so yes, how you're around your talking people, and then behind you.
7.
And it comes up to just subhead, and other people will walk by and wait.
7. There's one deadly city each year.
And then someone else over. That could be a movie.
That should be a movie. Bro. One girl.
And on the 8th year, it says,
How could you, Olivia?
We should actually, someone should write a movie like that. Like, it would be like a, it would be like
a personal hobby.
7 deadly years. That could be the name of the movie.
I can see over the camera.
That could be good.
That actually really weird. It's like almost like Happy Saturday, but like. Like, it would be like Happy Saturday. By the time they're like there will be 8 people in the family, by the time they're done, it'll just be the child surviving. I didn't think it was Jerusalem to grow up everything, yeah. Because you know, like, Jerusalem, like, people think they're the sign.
I just make it up. This is right. Make it up. What did you just say? Time. I said that last year. I know.
The snow is hot. That's what this is.
Oh, I thought you said. I don't know what I thought you said. What? Yeah. Okay. That would be so
Wait, have you guys ever gotten like really hurt? Scraping your mouth before hydrogen peroxide? Yeah, this is hydrogen peroxide. This is devil.
Are you sure? Everything.
And now I look forward to hydrogen peroxide, not the massive things I don't die.
Is that water?
Is except I get turkey.
I think it's the right way. No, it's the right way.
I see that you find your life.
You played against Lenny.
I was struggling. Yeah, everything from high school, it's all high school leagues.
I never thought about that. It's like a poor tiny freshman getting like stoned by a senior. But like maybe it's
no, that's his waist level.
It's like over our heads, but it's like at his hip. It's like
Our
we have no sword.
Yeah.
I mean, I have 5 more.
Yes, there is. Well, I'm not saying more about that tomorrow. You guys will feel better about it.
You look like you at all. Thanks.
We have finished the hydrolysis in the one.
I wear the same like collar every day. No, my sneakers have this weird like insert in it. Oh no, I don't know.
without each other.
You get the water back.
Guys, hydraulic. You must now hydraulic. I will bring you the
Wait a second. So there's an
Dropping out.
Yes!
So I dropped.
Now it's time to do the other one.
Okay, which one?
Glucose.
There we go.
Wait, no.
This one might be the first.
Yeah.
Wait, no, so
This
go.
one, this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we do this one.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, wait, I'll Alright. So you have the carbon, and you have the hydrogen. Glucose, hydrogen, HO, OH, oh, this is actually OH. Alright, so you have, this is what's called bad boy.
Now we need carbon.
Fructose.
That's actually pretty easy.
It's all fun and games until a man falls into the river and Aggie, I'm gonna be very honest with you. It do be like that sometimes. What's your feeling when you switch it around?
I'm laughing. I have an
You literally spent a couple of minutes making.
I can't wait to go home and
I just like the alternate route though.
I can't wait to go home and eat food. See, I heard these vlogs. Not that. Although I have eaten them.
I don't know.
That's what people tell. You guys like eat like alligators. Guys don't eat frog legs.
I heard that.
And alligators. Try the restaurant.
Allied version. Allied remix.
I like Town Road.
It should be like down, down,
Take my.
so up, and then you
Take my books all the way to my room.
down,
Try the left hand.
down, up is flat.
I got my
Up, down,
textbooks in the
down,
back.
down,
Textbooks.
down is okay. So we have an amount of
Add is. I wanna. I know I can't go back. I know I can't go back.
Seriously, once you hear, you can't really.
Yeah, exactly. You'll never leave.
She does that. You can have fun, really. Being miserable.
Oh no, I'm dropping. Guess I'm dropping out.
Miserable? Really? With like your friends like puzzle? That was actually nice to look at.
I never thought I would drop my I didn't.
Alright, cool. We got the high Alright, we'll just step on a like the amount of ways
On the shit, like that.
Where's all this stuff coming from? Where's the OH? Alright, I think I got it. Addie, it's time for the bond.
I think everything
That was funny, wasn't it?
Really bad job.
You take off. No.
Yes.
You guys are all done, right?
Yes. Yes. Time for table sugar. Olivia, you put some sugar in your teeth? Get it because it's sucrose? Haha.
You poor thing. Let's just say it's not gonna happen.
Okay, so that's the black and
Yeah, because Monday was posted.
Alright guys, are you ready?
With the water, this is a super. Hi, Joe, is this time?
Alright, you guys try to divide them into two equal. Try to divide them in the bags equally. Oh, we're done. Like relatively, don't forget to count them. You guys are done?
Oh, that's stupid.
Alright, what are we doing here?
Give them back. They're gonna have nothing.
What the literal hydrolysis is going on? Guys, I built a model. Guys, fun fact.
Oh my god. Very good. She wasn't even her
Alright guys, let's put them all back. We need to cover a few things today. If I saw everything, then we're good. We're good, right?
Olivia! He gets a drop.
Yeah, like very high. George is like far behind now. Once he drops out, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have to think about everything. Yes. By default, then you automatically become best all star guy. It's like Hitler. You're like going to be the best one. Because you don't want everyone to think after the team. No, wait, let's see. Then I was on the my bad.
I would look like.
It's like people who like try to destroy the world. There's no one who doesn't there's no one to exist.
Oh, it's not like down there. You just there's I'm not trying to hype myself up, but like.
in the back.
It's almost so stupid. But then when you actually take the class, it's stupid. Any philosophy class. Philosophy on how does
philosophy art is that one of the only classes you don't like?
I don't like any class, okay? I don't like any class.
You are in love with world history.
Do you have that now or not?
Mr. Glass's class is the only history I like.
I'm gonna be honest. There's like a one paragraph response to a whole page of him ranting about world history.
No. That was like one sentence ago.
Because he sucked for us that one time. And like the one time he sucked for us,
He's a really nice colleague too. Yeah.
I was gonna offer to buy his dog. One of his dogs was in the Miss Cab.
Yeah. Where in what? You live in Spring Street in Red Bank? My like best friend used to live there like for a long time. Huh? 63 or 64? Huh? 20 years? Well then, yeah, definitely. Polizzi. Towards Welsh Farms. In like those like it was like a quattro. It was like four apartment house and like there were two on the top and then. No, it's still apartments, but it's like maybe like 2 or 3 blocks in from Welsh Farms. You are? Oh, well then maybe, I mean, yeah, I bet I've like probably walked by your house. Anyway, yeah. All right. Let's get it together. Are you guys done? Can I have all the kits, please?
How can one split it out of their home?
Let's have kits. Come on, throw them.
How do you split it out of your yard? I was gonna look it up because I How to split it. How do you split it out?
Okay, ready?
This is dehydration.
Oh, you have to shoot an electron in your fuse.
Yeah.
Number 5 is dehydration synthesis, right? And then it's the one that's like.
Yes. Yes.
I figured out how to split an atom and I'm going to do it in my backyard.
All right, are you guys ready? We need to get through a little bit today so that tomorrow won't be too overwhelming because then your quiz is on Friday, right? And then we're going to do a lab, I think, on Monday, maybe another one on Tuesday too. Maybe we'll do 2 labs in a row. I don't. Do you guys like labs or? Yeah. Okay.
More fun than notes for an hour.
It's all right. I'm not. Okay. All right. All right. So we're gonna continue. All right. So polymerization. So what did we make today? We just made what? It's not a polymer yet. It's we had a monosaccharide, which is a monomer, and another monosaccharide, which is another monomer, and we made a disaccharide, which we can call a dimer if we want, which is 2, right? Trimer, tetramer. Anyway, but we're gonna call it a disaccharide, right? So we know the combinations of disaccharides. You only need to know those 3. Okay, that's pretty easy. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the next level, which was what? Oligosaccharides, right? So, but polymerization is the process by which a monomer becomes what? A polymer. And what's the process by which that happens?
Polymerization.
It's called polymerization, but what process? Dehydration synthesis, right? So you see that this is what? Again, I just simplified all the other stuff out just so we can kind of appreciate this. What is this right here then? If those are sugars, it's this thing right here is the glycosidic linkage. What's this whole thing? We just did it. A disaccharide, right? Okay. And then what do we do if I want to add another monomer to it?
Go for it.
What happens? If I add another one, then now it's an oligosaccharide, and what comes out each time I add a new, right? There's another water that comes out, right? There's another water. So you can appreciate that each time something else gets built onto it, we get another water, right?
How little is 5 molecules of water?
Really little.
It's not a lot.
Tiny.
in a droplet of water, how many molecules?
I mean, I'm not really good at that kind of estimation stuff, but a lot more than, it's a lot. So in any case, so you should know that water is being produced when you're building on these larger molecules, right? Okay, so what is this next thing? Okay, so the process by which polymers are made is called what? What kind of dehydration synthesis, or it's called a condensation reaction, because what happens? It releases water, okay? And what, if you were to describe the process in words, can you tell me what's happening there? What happened between those? Lidu?
Basically, the oxygen, the OH molecule of a...
That's not oxygen, Joe. What is that called? OH of one molecule.
Hydroxyl group.
A hydroxyl group of one
molecule.
One monomer, or one molecule.
Is it, because of the electronegativity of that, is attracted to the other hydroxyl.
Okay, what part of the hydroxyl of the other one?
The hydrogen.
The hydrogen atom on another hydroxyl group of an adjacent monomer, a monosaccharide, and then what happens?
And then the oxygen takes the 2 hydrogens to form water, and then to fill in that gap where both bond
to each other. Good. So basically, it's the two hydroxyl groups from adjacent monosaccharides are reacting, right? The hydroxyl group of one, the oxygen of that is attracted to the H of the other one. It pulls it off of it, right, to form water, and then the other one connects to the hydrogen, the carbon that's missing the bond now too. So then it forms glycosidic linkages. This is all review now, right? Arsh.
So it's kind of it just keeps on adding on to the chain?
Yeah, it just keeps adding on and adding on and adding on. And each time you make something new, water is produced, right? Okay. So why are we even talking about this? So obviously you know that disaccharides, you've heard of them all, right? Maltose is used in making malt, sort of beverages and things like that, right? Table sugar, you guys obviously know, is used in foods, and then lactose is in milk, right? So it's important in our nutrition. That's one thing. But oligosaccharides also have another major function. So how many monosaccharides do we say are in one oligo? 3 to 10, right? Okay. And usually when we're talking about oligosaccharides, it's usually not a single one repeated many times. It's a combination of different monosaccharides. So instead of being glucose, it might be glucose, some other one, another one. So it's all these different combinations, right? And so oligosaccharides, a lot of times, often where they're found on the surfaces of cell membranes, right? So if you look at this picture, right, do you see this kind of halo around here? Mm-hmm. Right? That's pretty much all the oligosaccharides extending out from the cell, right? So this is a cell, and these are the little oligosaccharides coming out. And all of these, like this whole kind of halo, this whole ring right there outside, that border here, so like from like this, from here, and like that whole part that kind of extends out here, that's called the glycocalyx, right? It's basically like it's like an M&M. Think of it as like an M&M. What do M&Ms have on the outside? That's made of what?
The weird thing. I don't know what
M&Ms are unique. It's like a glaze. It's like a sugar coat, right? So basically, like the glycocalyx is like it's like a sugar coat on the outside of a cell, right? And what is it used for? So I'm gonna change from this model to this model. You see what I did here? So you see how those are the same? They're depicting the same thing. So the only difference is that now these, instead of like this, these are actually depicted as the little monomers that they're composed of, right? So do you notice, like, so each one of these, like, so this blue square, that would be representing what? Huh? The blue square, the green circle, like all these little things. That's representing what? Each monomer, each monosaccharide, right?
Oh.
And then this whole chain here would be the what? That would be the oligosaccharide. Because how many are there? 1, 2. There are going to be between 3 and 10, right? Are they composed of the same one repeated many different times?
No.
Are there any identical ones to each other here?
No.
There are maybe a few, but not that many, right? So do you see why this is really, how the form of this really relates to its function? What's the function of it again? It protects the cell, that's right. But the main thing is, like, if I'm a molecule, if I'm like some sort of hormone, or I'm some sort of like messenger, and I want to go find that cell, what can I do? I can recognize that cell, or that cell can recognize me based on, it's basically like a code, right? So like the sequence of the different monosaccharides basically is like a code, right? So things with like the right code might be like, oh, like I noticed this, I recognize this, I'm going to bond to that, right? Whereas other things that don't recognize any of these codes are not going to interact with that cell, right? So do you see how like that's like the main function of oligosaccharides? Because they have like a different code for each one, it's like it's basically like used for cell signaling and cell recognition. Okay, so you do have to know that. And then I think we need to continue tomorrow because we don't have that much time left. But think about that, right, for tomorrow. And tomorrow we'll talk about the rest. Do you guys understand what the glycocalyx is versus... Right?
Is glycocalyx just an example of a...
No, the glycocalyx is this whole layer here, between here and here. There's all these, like...
And that's contained of...
oligosaccharides.
Okay.
It's like the collective oligosaccharides extending from the cell.
Okay.
Whoa!
Right?
Scientists found out in the animal that it's not the oxygen to live. That's cool.
Miss Pittman?
Yes.
So, that contains oligosaccharides.
So a single oligosaccharide is this.
Yes. So then the
Glycocalyx is basically like the whole, all the oligosaccharides extending out from a cell.
That was 45 cents.
I don't want to be the first to take it.